Next up, we have Janie, who will be presenting about translating innovation into education. So Janie Butler is an education and workforce development leader dedicated to advancing sustainable science. As the Education and Workforce Development Specialist at the Good Food Institute, she designs innovative programs and workforce solutions to build talent in the growing alternative protein sector. She is also the CEO of Science Done Sustainably, a startup that transforms green industry innovations into classroom-ready curricula. Previously, Janie worked with the Colorado Bioscience Institute and Beyond Benign, where she championed sustainable STEM education by fostering future scientists and leaders. Through collaboration with diverse partners, she has developed engaging curricula and strives to make a lasting impact on science education and sustainability. So Janie, welcome.
Thank you. Let me get my slides going for you all. Okay, let's see how it goes. How does that look? Okay, I got one thumbs up. That's all I need. Thanks for having me, Beyond Benign. It feels a little funny to be on the other side of this conversation, but I'm excited to talk a little bit broader about education. I'm happy to dive into anything if it piques people's interest along the way. There's been so many great speakers so far, really diving into the specifics of what they're doing and the chemistry of it. It is fantastic. That is not my strong suit. Bet you'll quickly learn that from me. But I'm going to talk about translating a lot of different innovations into education. See my headshot on there. And then I can't resist. I feel like it's nice to share a little bit about myself when speaking to a new audience. There's some familiar faces for me, some new ones. So I'm going to look at the chat and see if there's any photo on here that piques people's interest more than the others. And I'll start with that one. Yes, participation is mandatory. Okay, people are about the food. I feel that. I live off of sweet potatoes. It's a major food group for me. And Betty Crocker chocolate chip cookies, they are the ultimate best cookie for me. I do not think it gets better. Insomnia cookies are rated lower. The Costco big cookies are rated lower. This is big heated debate in my family, so very important. Yeah, thanks for interacting and tossing those in there. The one in the center is I just finished hiking the Pacific Crest Trail this last summer, which is a 2,600-mile trek from Mexico to Canada. Backpacking is a big part of my life. It really helps connect me with nature, and it's a big motivator for me of why I think this work is important. And it is a Kindle. I'm obsessed with my Kindle. If anyone has good book recommendations, let me know. I'm reading one that's a little like sci-fi now. The Martian author came out with a new book. I can't remember the title, but it's a great read. Other than that, I'm trying to learn how to ski this winter. It's not going great, but I'm getting there. And I also do a little bit of metal smithing, jewelry making. So Julian, we have that overlap. I probably have a lot I could learn from you. Also a photo of my family, and that's another story. So I'll ignore those other ones for now. Sweet. So I figured I would take a moment to chat about my path in green chemistry, knowing that we're going to be touching upon a lot of these different components as I talk through today. So I'm really lucky in that I got to be exposed to green chemistry when I was in my undergraduate. I went to Loyola University of Maryland, and when I was there, they signed on to being a green chemistry commitment signer. So maybe similar to other people here, I got to be in that lucky position of, okay, there's this field of green chemistry. We're learning we can do things in a little bit more of a sustainable way. Let's go through the action of trying to figure out how to do that together. So I got to work in a lot of undergraduate labs, changing some of the reactions that were done previously into less hazardous materials being used. And it really empowered me to feel like I had control over the future, that I was able to bring in this passion for the outdoors with this passion for chemistry and science, finding a way for the two to exist with each other through green chemistry. Probably no surprise to anyone is that I went on to work at Beyond Benign afterwards, having this deep passion in education and in green chemistry. Makes sense to go to the green chemistry education spot, the hub for it all. I worked at Beyond Benign for about 4 years. Deep passion set within me. I'm very lucky to have always had the green chemistry perspective when looking at materials and looking at educational materials. I worked as their K-12 program manager. I then went on to found Science Done Sustainably because I couldn't quite get rid of the green chemistry bug. So I worked with other organizations and other companies translating their innovations into digestible curriculum for classrooms, for teachers through teacher trainings. Worked at Colorado Bioscience Institute after Beyond Benign, which is fantastic, working with a lot of teachers who have low resources and implementing different labs into their biology, chemistry classrooms, doing trainings all the way up to the executive level. And finally, I'm at GFI, the Good Food Institute presently. We'll dive into that a bit more, but I think it brings up a lot of great opportunities for bringing the world of green chemistry into food. I think we've had a lot of mention of candy so far. I think we talked about potato starch in a breakout room. Julian talked about food waste and the importance of fragrance. So there's a lot of overlap happening here. I can't talk about Beyond Benign without saying Believe Teachers. This was a fantastic group that I got to collaborate with. I think over the course of my time there, it was like 42 teachers I worked with, mainly high school, but also middle school and elementary. It's fantastic to work alongside them, in addition with Kate Anderson, and to build some really accessible materials within this space. As everyone knows, the world of green chemistry is quickly changing. And so there's really a big demand for having these resources ready. It was amazing being able to work with this powerhouse team of educators to create them and make them happen. So what are these resources? I keep just using that word and not getting specific. So I figured I'd throw a few specifics within here. So these are hands-on NGSS aligned materials that have the green chemistry principles woven within them. So thinking about having that sustainability lens, thinking about doing things at a lower equal cost price. So applying that into what's already existing in elementary, middle, and high school classrooms for a better, more sustainable option. These, of course, were all free open access. I believe they still are. And it's about the idea of making this complex chemistry accessible and engaging. I think we were talking about that too with Jasmine in our breakout room of like, how do you make this a concept that people who are in elementary school can understand? It's really hard when chemistry isn't often introduced to people until 8th, 9th grade. So some examples of this was doing some bioplastics lessons, focusing on the chemistry of bioplastics. So we created a 8-part student guide with Lemelson MIT. That was fantastic. It goes through and having, touching upon again on potato starch, using different starches to create those base materials, seeing how you can extract through different alcohols to create threads, what type of materials are made really well with bioplastics, which ones need to be moved through more. That was a great and fun project. We had a high school teacher implement it with a really innovative senior class in AP chemistry. And I believe 2 of the students actually applied for a patent off of that work, which is fantastic to see. Another one is plant-based meat chemistry. We partnered with Impossible Foods on creating a 4-part elementary school guide on how can you translate these big topics such as sustainable food systems into a digestible way, pun intended, for elementary school students. And so this is a great exploration in using hula hoops, going in their backyard or the parking lot, trying to explore the number of organisms they're seeing, how many blades of grass, how does this apply when you're thinking about the land usage of something plant-based versus the land usage of something animal-based. So that was really fantastic to do. And then a lot of greener reactions. So you always do Le Chat in your high school classroom. How can we do that in a greener way? How can we do that in a way so that you don't have to deal with all that toxic waste? It can be a bit cheaper, more accessible for students, and they're gonna have more of a hands-on opportunity. You don't need to be as worried for students of like, oh, I don't know, I really have to trust a class before we can open the chemical closet. We're bringing in some household materials. Okay, I'm cutting myself off on this one because I could go on forever. As you probably know, we're chatting about outreach materials. There's a whole page of these on Beyond Benign's website. It is under, I believe, the middle school curriculum, so it can be a little tricky to find. Here's 3 more of them. I will make myself not talk about all three and go to the chat and see if there's one of these three people are more interested in hearing about than the others. So the options are biomimicry matching game, ecovative, or mushrooms and new plastic, or blackberry solar cell. Blackberries, awesome. Nice. Ooh, Chloe might be in the minority, but I'll chat about them all. You can always just email me. The blackberry solar cell one is really cool. That's built off of, I believe, Amy Cannon's PhD thesis or work that she did within her PhD. And so you're able to have students come in, use 2 cells, smash a blackberry within them, and use the photosynthesis receptors to conduct energy. So you can put electrodes on either side and even have it measurable. What's really fun is that we would have students come out and do this activity with us, and they're like chasing for the sun to not be in a cloud to try to get the highest readings, because EJ was right. Everything is a competition. So if it's not a competition, no one wants to do it. So this is fantastic. There's a lot of resources on there as well about how to make science communication topics more accessible, and having engaging materials that are also easy to get to, some household resources to get that done. Cool. Then I went on to found Science Done Sustainably. I love all the interaction in the chat. It's fantastic. Keep it coming. So this is about really translating innovative science into digestible, ready-to-use curriculum. I do a lot of expert speaking events in industry. They want to be able to share their stories because there's so much value to that. How did you end up being a green chemist? What was the path that got you there? And did you also hate biology in high school? Because that was kind of me. So like seeing that level of accessibility is really important. And through this, creating a lot of curriculum, outreach materials, and teacher professional development trainings. Just some photos from some of those here. You can see we have a lab setting, and in here we were talking about the role within lung systems and how toxins can get captured within them. So really fun days. And through this, I worked again with Beyond Benign. I'll focus on some of those more materials on creating resources for the GCTLC. So I did this through Science Done Sustainably. There are 20, I think, we published together. And so you can see it on, plug for the GCTLC, if John's still on here, of making resources that are, again, easy to access, have that comment function so people can really collaborate on these. Again, NGSS aligned with all hands-on activities. If you want to, you can connect with me on the GCTLC and you can see the whole host of these. As always, I'm happy to chat about any of them with anyone. We'll do the same thing here. Is there any one of these 3 that people are more interested in hearing about than the others? So we have essential oil extraction, cups to cleaners, and endothermic exothermic. Yeah, Chloe does get to pick. We'll see how quick they are with the keyboard.
No, I'm just gonna unmute.
Do it.
Let's do the middle one.
Nice.
Sorry, y'all. I get to choose actually. So.
Embrace the power. It's your power to have. So the middle one is all about, oops, sorry. Maybe I can go backwards, maybe I can't. There we go. Polylactic acid. And so it's an activity going through cups to cleaners. So if you've seen those PLA cups, they often have a green rim on them. They're plastic. Some people would say one-time use cups. You can actually do a very easy classroom experiment with them, or you could change it into an outreach experiment to break down those cups. It makes a pretty weak cleaner, but it can be a cleaner. And so this is a great trick to do to students. If you want them to help clean up your lab, you run the experiment and then they test the efficacy of the cleaner on the lab bench surfaces. So it's a really fun one to do. It's also nice to be able to explore a resource that they've probably seen a lot. They probably interacted with these PLA cups often. You can find them at pretty much any cafe. And then being able to break it down into its components to see like, oh, there is a real tangible part of chemistry. I can see the object we started with and then what we ended up with. And so that's a really fun one. The other 2 I'm always happy to chat about too if people want to reach out. Okay, lots of blabbing from me. But the next phase of my life I'm going to bring you all into is the Good Food Institute, which is where I'm currently working as an education and workforce development specialist, which is a really fun and fantastic opportunity to bring green chemistry into food systems. As I mentioned before, we have been chatting about food for these last hour and a half, whether we've realized it or not, through all the systems of the candy and the food waste. It's really a prevalent way to bring chemistry into an easy and digestible way for students. So I'll cut myself off before I keep chatting too much. Here is a slide with a lot of text. I do that so in case people want to read through or explore something more on their own, they can. But I wanted to give a little bit of background on what the Good Food Institute is. So the Good Food Institute, also called GFI, is a nonprofit think tank that is developing the roadmap for a sustainable, secure, and just protein supply. So the hope is to try to create a more sustainable food system that is just in its values and is secure for the long run. People have probably heard by 2050, we have a little bit of issue with feeding our population growth. There's a few ways to look at this. And so there's 3 pillars they explore in terms of plant-based meat, cultivated meat, and fermentation process of creating meat-like products. And that how we can use this to mitigate the environmental impacts of our food systems. This looks like decreasing zoonotic diseases and ultimately feeding more people on these resources. So at GFI, we look at this within 3 lenses. There's the science and technology arm, the corporate engagement arm, and the policy arm. Science and technology arm is where I sit. I'm very lucky to get to be on that arm. And it looks into creating open access research in alternative proteins to create a thriving ecosystem in these game-changing fields. So how can we create resources and also equip others to create resources so we can further this field together? Corporate engagement is how we engage with industry partners. There are 1,400 industry partners we work with that are within the fields of alternative proteins. So those are some of the big players like Beyond Impossible Meat. There's some of the smaller ones too, like Daring Chickens. And we have an ecosystem map I'll share with you if you want to check out any of those. There's also a policy arm of how can we enact change so that these are systems that are long lasting. How can we advocate for fair policy and public relations in terms of funding this type of work as well? Okay, we'll check the chat. No questions on this so far, which is great. And what I want to do in bringing this to you all is that there really is a need for a skilled talent force to go into alternative proteins in this biomanufacturing workforce. So you can see here kind of the 3 pillars it's broken down to of plant-based, meat, eggs, dairy. This is what like your Impossible Burger would fit in within. Cultivated meat and dairy. This is what you might think of as like lab-grown meat, where you take those same stem cells, you're able to direct them and create meat for consumption. And then fermentation derived ingredients, think similar to brewers, where there's big yeast vats, being able to create products in bulk in that way. And so I love this slide because I feel like it does a great job of calling out all of the foundational skills that are needed within these pillars. There is a ton that are needed within all of them, and especially within the protein chemistry field. Here's where I have something to finally give you all. So here are some of the resources we can provide. My hope is that we can create more together, but there are open access materials and free support that we can provide as being a think tank, as being these change agents that we are able to equip you all with, or any partners you have or colleagues you'd like to equip them with. So our first one, actually, I have slides that go through these more. The only thing I want to mention on here is that we do have a Good Food Institute research grant program. So if you are looking to get into any of these fields, if you're looking to do some of your research on it, there is opportunities there. And then there's the Good Food Institute Alternative Protein Project. This is 67 schools across the globe who have signed on to having student groups who lead these type of efforts. They get hands-on support, they get mentorship. So for any of the people who are in their schooling, whether it's PhD, undergrad, I would encourage you to check this out. It's actually the one period during the year where you can apply into this program. And I have some fantastic colleagues who lead that type of work. So the first resource I'll touch upon really quickly is that we have a teaching library. So this is open access course material. It has syllabi, slide decks, lectures. So if anyone's looking to integrate this into their teaching, this is a great place to start. Honestly, if you're in the K-12 setting, or if you're feeling like these aren't quite fitting, even if you're in higher ed, feel free to reach out to me directly. It is a bulky resource, and I'm happy to have a more tailored version of this provided. This is a cool resource. This is a visualization of our ecosystem map. I can also pull these URLs and share them afterwards. This is where you can play around and say, like, do I have any companies nearby who are doing this type of work? Is there anyone that I can reach out to who might sit down and grab a coffee with me and chat about this? Is this something that is happening in my hometown? It's a really fun way to interact and see what it's looking like in the ecosystem. And then the last tool I love to share is a career pathways tool. This is a really recently launched tool. It shows the skills and the value chain of going into all the different career pathways within alternative proteins. So it breaks it down. If you want to go into plant-based proteins, what are the role types that are out there? What are the skills you could be looking for as you're undergoing your education? What should you possibly highlight on a resume? It is kind of built like a video game. It's really interactive. I find it a lot of fun. And so I would really encourage people to check that out. There's also a lab zones tool on that. So you can explore what it looks like. If you're like, oh, I really love doing this act in the lab, what career pathways could that lead into for me? If I'm passionate about sustainability and food systems within the alternative protein sector. So how does green chemistry and alternative proteins overlap? Because I have been lucky enough to spend a lot of time within the green chemistry space, I feel like there's really apparent overlap between these two industries. I think there's a lot of potential for exploring sustainable food processes and how to do more green chemistry within these labs that are producing this type of food. Wow, I'm running out of words at the end here, so I'll carry through. Alternative proteins as a case study is also fantastic for green chemistry. You can really call out those principles of how does this look like? How can you apply green chemistry into a field and have something very tangible to grasp onto? And expanding the conversation into new disciplines. I mean, we're always in these pillars. It's fantastic to be able to knock them down. Alternative proteins really touches a lot of different sectors, and it's an interesting way to bring in the chemistry conversation into classrooms that might not always be talking about chemistry. I also put in there, like, what else? Tell me what else we should be doing. I love having these types of conversations, and I'd love to support any work that people are really passionate about doing, bringing these two fields together. So what I see is that we can do a lot of time in, I would love to be able to grow your fabrics, Julia, and we'll have to explore that one a bit more. But I think there's a lot of potential for collaboration, bringing together educators, researchers, and the industry in the same room to see what we should and can create. What can we create together, developing new curriculum or case studies or expert testimonies, and engaging. How can we encourage active participation within this field and also within the field of green chemistry? I really see that these two overlap, and there's a lot of potential for us to increase the reach within both of them. I should be at the end. Great. Okay, so this is my, please email me, let's chat. I always love to hear what people are thinking around this type of work. And I couldn't resist, I put some images in here too. We have different resources to provide. So if you want to see the state of the industry for alternative seafood, we have a guide around that. If you want to know some of the specifics within cell cultivated meat, there's great resources online. There is a online MOOC course if people want to dive in more deeply. So there is a lot to be explored. It's really exciting, I think, to be able to overlap these two worlds of green chemistry and alternative proteins. But I appreciate the opportunity being able to share my story, some of the work I've done. And as always, I'm happy to chat about it all with you all. So thanks for giving me the opportunity.